And welcome to the Rob Call Bottom Up Show. It's available on Pacifica Radio Network, on Progressive Radio Network, on YouTube, on iTunes, on SoundCloud, on Stitcher, and for the complete archives, go to opednews.com/podcasts with an S. I am very pleased to have back again as a guest Paul Craig Roberts. He was Assistant Secretary of the Treasury for Economic Policy under Ronald Reagan. He's chairman of the Institute for Political Economy. Dr. Roberts was associate editor and columnist for the Wall Street Journal and columnist for Business Week and the Scripps Howard News Service. He was a nationally syndicated columnist for Creators Syndicate in Los Angeles. And his website, which is a very busy, great website, is paulcraigroberts.org. Great to have you back on the show.
Thank you, Rob. It's always a pleasure to speak with you.
Yeah. So I wanted to start off with a definition. A word that you use a lot is insouciant.
Yeah.
So I looked up a definition, and here's what the Google gave me: blithe, lack of concern, nonchalance. The quality of being insouciant is the lack of care or concern, or a lighthearted attitude. What do you mean when you call people insouciant?
Yeah, just sort of a cavalier lack of awareness, just unaware of what's happening around them and why. And they're satisfied with a few sound bites from CNN or something like that. And that then defines their world. They let the world be defined for them by what I call prostitutes. They don't think, like you do or I do. They don't pay attention to what's really happening. I know you and I don't agree on everything. We agree on some things, but we both exercise independent thought, and we try to get a handle on it for ourselves. And most people, they just let someone else control the explanations that they accept. So every morning CNN says, here's your explanation for today, and hands them, and they say, okay, thank you.
Yeah, so I think what you kind of mean is clueless and gullible and don't care that they are.
Yeah, no, some of them might care, but they don't care enough to get self-informed.
My experience with the mainstream media, and I've called it the corpse stream media, because they're like dead and corporate, is that I can't stand watching them for too long. So I want to see what they're saying, because they have such a powerful role in setting the conversation and selling whatever it is they're selling.
Yeah.
But I basically switch from channel to channel, and then after a little bit, I just get disgusted and I start going to Netflix or something, where my mind doesn't have to pay attention to the garbage.
Yeah. Well, you see, we've talked about it before, Rob. Clinton let 6 mega companies buy up 90% of the media. So it's not a media any longer. And so what used to be a media now is simply a voice for the ruling private interest groups, like the military security complex. And that's what they've been a voice for. That's where, this is what Russiagate's about, and whatever this current impeachment thing is called. It's getting rid of somebody who was a threat to the budget and the power of the military security complex, because he was going to normalize relations with Russia and thereby take away the enemy they need to have a $1,000 billion annual budget and the power that goes with it. So there are a lot of reasons not to like Trump, but the kinds of reasons I'd like to go after him on are not what they're after him for.
What ones would they be?
Well, I don't like his environmental policies. That bothers me a great deal. The fact that essentially he's overturning all of the efforts to control pollution, to protect natural resources, wildlife, everything that had been accomplished over past decades. I mean, this started with Cheney under Bush, rolling back this stuff, but it's been awful with Trump. You know, he's letting mining companies into national monuments. They're accelerating the cutting of national forests. There's no wildlife protection.
And he's been appointing foxes to guard all the hen houses.
Yeah, well, in terms of the environment, right. This started with Cheney.
Well, not just the environment, but like the FDA, certainly. He's done it there too. And land management. I mean, almost every place you look, his appointees are people who have huge, massive conflicts of interests.
Well, he's letting things be exploited for profit that shouldn't be. And I think it's the sort of, we got to have jobs. We got to have jobs. These are jobs. These are jobs. It may be you just can't think of the consequences. You know, we've talked about it before. My view of neoliberalism, neoliberal capitalism, is that the only reason the corporations have profits is they can impose all the cost of production on third parties, on the environment. And the cost that they impose on the environment, on third parties, they're called social costs, external costs.
Externalities. These costs exceed their profits. In other words, the profits they make by imposing these costs are less than the cost of the externalities. So they are not producing GDP, they're destroying GDP. And you see this all over. You see it, for example, in the export of Americans' jobs. You know, they move the manufacturing jobs to China. They move software jobs, all kinds of professional skill jobs. This helps the corporate profits. It destroys the aggregate demand of the domestic economy. It undermines the budgets of state and local governments, their ability to meet their pension systems and obligations. These are huge costs. They vastly exceed the profits that the companies make by doing this. So, you know, I see neoliberalism as a just total dysfunctional system. It runs down an economy. It's parasitism, and Marjorie Kelly recently wrote a book about a democratic economy, where she talks about an extractive capitalist economy versus a generative one that is sustainable. And I think what you're talking about is this extractive approach. So what's the solution? What do we need to do?
Well, you know, when you've gone as far as they've gone, it's hard to have a solution. Trump was originally, you know, he had two good things going for him. One was he was going to normalize relations with Russia. They're not going to permit that because the military security complex is far more powerful than the president. The other thing, he was going to bring the jobs home. Now, he didn't understand why they had left, that the corporations didn't want them to come home. And he got all mixed up in a trade war with China. Well, that's not the solution. The solution would be you would have to tell the corporations, look, this works for one company or a few companies to move its jobs offshore. But when you all do that, there's nobody left here that has any consumer income. Who's going to buy your products? You know, so I'm changing the tax system, and this is what we're doing. If you produce at home for your home market, you get a low tax rate. If you produce offshore the goods you're going to sell to Americans, you're going to get a high tax rate. And I'm going to use that tax rate to take away the profits that you make by offshoring the jobs. So the taxes are going to more than offset your labor cost savings by not using Americans and using Chinese instead. And that forces them home. That's the way you would have to do it. But of course,
the problem, though, is that there are repercussions for that. The Chinese have basically hurt the soybean farmers and other farmers so that now they're not very happy. And it's not so simple as I'm going to put a tariff on something and that'll change it.
Well, no, it's not. The tariffs won't work because China doesn't pay the tariffs. Look, we've talked about this before. Half or more of what are called Chinese imports into the United States are not Chinese. They're the products of Apple, Nike, Levi. They're the offshore production of the American firms. They produce in China, but they don't sell it in China. They bring it back here to sell to Americans. So there's a disconnect between the wages spent producing goods and the people who are buying them. They're not paid the wages. It's kind of like if Henry Ford didn't pay wages to his Ford workers, they couldn't buy the Fords. So when Apple doesn't...
And Ford was very conscious of that. He paid his workers enough. And he said, if I don't pay my workers enough, they can't afford to buy the products that we're making. Exactly. And today's companies have forgotten that. That's right.
Well, see, Apple, they don't pay Americans to make their computers, their laptops, their iPhones. They pay Chinese to make them. So they bring them here and try to sell them to Americans who don't have the income associated with the production of the products. So the way it's not, you see, the tariffs would be paid by Apple. They'd be paid by Nike, by Levi. Do you see what I'm saying? They wouldn't be paid by China.
And they would raise the prices on those phones and those products.
Well, the tariffs would raise the prices.
Yeah.
And the Americans already don't have growing incomes. The only reason there's been any consumer demand is people have gone deeper and deeper into debt. And now you've got them where all they can do is make the minimum payment on their credit card. So the debt grows every month. So they have essentially, what the offshoring did, it essentially destroyed domestic aggregate demand. Well,
in the long run is going to, the United States right now is the biggest market in the world. And if workers don't have any money, well, maybe Europe is bigger, but it's one of the biggest. And if workers stop having the money to buy the products because the companies left the workers behind, it's no longer going to have the economic influence it had. And at some point, the dollar is no longer going to be the exchange currency. And then the U.S. is in huge trouble.
Then we're in huge trouble because we'll no longer be able to pay our bills by printing money.
That's right.
And when you have massive trade deficits and you can't pay your bills by printing money, then you're bankrupt.
So another big issue that you're writing about a lot is white men.
Yeah.
Is there a tie between the economics we're talking about, the tariffs in China, and white men?
Well, the majority of manufacturing workers were men. They're white and black. They work together, but the whites are a larger percentage of the population. So in terms of numbers, it's impacted more whites than blacks, though I think they're both impacted proportionally, but not in terms of numbers, just because the white population is so much larger. So what it does, it takes away the providing function of the male, of the man, of the husband, the father. They can't any longer provide for the family on the basis that they could when they had these middle-class jobs. You don't have the same living standards working a 30-hour a week for Walmart or Home Depot that you had working in a manufacturing plant. And you don't have any medical benefits for your family. You're not accumulating a pension. And so it undermines the role of the men in the family, in the society. And it it busts up families. It busts up expectations. It creates social instabilities, uncertainties, and it essentially destroys the social cohesion of the society.
It makes me, when you describe that way, it makes me think of impotence. It makes me think of emasculation.
Yeah.
Men who were able to take care of their families, to have decent incomes, can't do that anymore. And I mean, the real culprit is these global trade deals. That's what did it. That's what wiped out millions of jobs and completely destroyed too many industries in this country that can never, I don't believe, ever be brought back. Do you think that they can be brought back?
It's difficult because you see they've been going long enough that all the supply chains are gone. The supply chains are gone. The infrastructure is gone, and the workforce is gone. The people, to be in a manufacturing workforce, you have to be disciplined. You gotta get up. You gotta go to work. You gotta be alert all day. You screw up something, you ruined huge thousands and thousands of dollars of production. It's a discipline to be in a manufacturing workforce, and that, of course, was good for people. But all that's gone. People don't have those habits now. They don't. You have to start learning all over again. See, I often say the United States has become a third world country. It doesn't have a first world workforce. It doesn't have the first world attitudes or opportunities.
Or healthcare.
You see, look, when the working class had manufacturing jobs, they could send their kids to college. Now the kids get loaded up with massive student loan debt.
Lifetime.
Yes, lifetime. They can't get out from under it because the jobs don't pay enough to pay off the loans and provide an independent existence. We've had all these studies from the Federal Reserve that there are more young people aged 24 to 34 living with parents and grandparents than there are living independently. They can't earn enough to rent their own apartment and pay their loans. So they live at home. They're back in their childhood rooms, or they're staying with grandparents. I see it all over. I see it. I mean, it's affecting everybody. And so this is a destruction of a first world country. That's basically what has happened. These trade deals, as you call them, and we'll call them that, it's destroyed the United States as a first world country. It's now a second world. It's going into the third world. And how do you get out of that? Look how long it took India to start moving.
Now, Trump talked about getting us out of these trade deals. He said they were bad.
That's right.
But how's he doing with that?
Well, the corporations are not going to let him any more than the military security complex is going to let him normalize relations with Russia. They have to have the enemy. If they don't, why are we giving them $1,000 billion a year? That would pay for national health. Easily pay for it. Well, they're not going to give it up. The profits. Look, Eisenhower told us in 1961 what was happening. Nobody paid any attention because the Cold War, the Soviet threat. It's a massive complex now.
It's not just the war complex, the military industrial. It's the military medical industrial complex now.
Yeah, I call it military security complex because the CIA, the budget of the CIA is unknown, but it's horrendous. It's huge. They can do whatever they want. They don't even need an appropriation. They have so many independent sources of money.
Black sources. Just
think about all the trillions of dollars we're told the Pentagon can't find and the General Accounting Office can't find.
21 trillion, I think.
I can't believe it. I mean, it's a huge number.
Why should we believe it?
Well, we do know that the Pentagon couldn't find $2.5 trillion. Remember, Rumsfeld said, and where they were looking for it, that was the part of the Pentagon that got hit by a rocket or whatever hit the Pentagon.
Convenient.
And wiped out all the records and the people doing it. So we do know that there were $2.5 trillion. This other missing sum comes from various different sources. I haven't studied it, but some of them seem to be credible. So, where is that money? How is it missing? And the General Accounting Office has said over and over and over that the Pentagon's accounting system is so incredible it can't be audited. They can't even audit it. So even a forensic audit can't find.
So they're totally unaccountable.
It's totally unaccountable, apparently, yeah. So, and Eisenhower told us in '61 that if we didn't keep a close eye on this, we were going to lose our democracy, that they were going to be more powerful than the people and the government. And you look at what they can do to Trump. I mean, we've had 3 years of Russiagate. The whole thing was a hoax, but it stopped him from normalizing relations with Russia. In fact, he's afraid now to even meet with Putin. And people don't realize.
We should not forget Hillary's role in this vilification of Russia, because it's her way to excuse herself from losing the election.
Yeah, right. And it's also her way of staying in good with the military security complex, because they've got endless amounts of money to give for campaign contributions. And the CIA and FBI are part of it, and they cover up for you or they go after you. And you much rather have them covering up for you. So I think Hillary and Bill figured that out a long time ago. And the people who get on the wrong side of the military security complex, they're in a lot of trouble. Don't you remember what Senator Schumer told Trump? You better shut up. They have 6 ways from breakfast to lunch to come after you.
That's right.
And they do. They do. I mean, look at Julian Assange. What's happening to him? Or Manning. Any of these people. The law doesn't matter. They are far above the law.
Now, you just mentioned 2 people who are whistleblowers who I think are heroes. I'd throw in Ed Snowden as well.
Right. Yeah.
What do you think about this whistleblower who reported about the Ukraine conversation?
Well, it turns out he's a CIA guy who was in bed with the Democratic Russiagate scam. And now he's saying, well, I got so many, I worked for Biden and I did this. I got so many conflicts of interest. He's pulling out of his testimony.
So you don't see him as another whistleblower then?
No, it was an orchestration, just like everything else they've done to Trump.
Yeah, I talked to John Kiriakou, who's an FBI whistleblower. Who
they got him too. They put him in jail.
Yeah, they jailed him for blowing the whistle on torturing people.
Yeah,
and I've talked to some. I mean, Op-Ed News and my show have been honored with the Pillar Award for supporting whistleblowers, and I have a pretty close connection to the whistleblower community. They're not happy about the threats to reveal this whistleblower's identity.
Well, the whistleblower law requires that you come forward, reveal yourself, and give your testimony. And the reason they didn't want him to be revealed who he was because of all the connections that showed it was unreliable. See, that's what that's about. A lot of people get lost in things. He's not a legitimate whistleblower. And the law is very explicit. You can't be an anonymous whistleblower. if you were an anonymous whistleblower, they wouldn't know anything about Kirikou or William Benny or any of the others.
Well, but he's not anonymous. He's keeping it secret. That's not the same as anonymous.
It was. Yes, it is. If it's secret, it's anonymous.
No, the whole point of the whistleblower confidentiality is that they can blow the whistle and not suffer all the consequences. I mean, let's face it, if anybody who blows the whistle, their employer's going to do everything they can to destroy their lives in every way possible. And I've met so many whistleblowers who are legitimate whistleblowers who have had their lives destroyed. Their spouses left them. They lost their kids. They lost their house. They lost their job. They lost their security. They go into debt for $1 million or millions of dollars to pay for their legal defense.
Yeah, and they get put in prison and tortured. I agree with all that, but you see, it's because the whistleblower law is not enforced. A whistleblower is protected under statute from any of this happening to them.
It's just recent, though. I mean,
it's been there for a long time. What they do is they say they're not a whistleblower. They broke national security laws, or they make some charge that's not true. But they sit there holding the courts in their hands and the process of law, so they can say what they want against the whistleblower. So they say, well, they're not whistleblowers because the whistleblowers are protected by federal statute. And so the powers that be just ignore the law and say, no, he's not a whistleblower.
It's a slippery slope to say somebody's not a whistleblower then.
That's what they do. I'm not saying they're not, but this is what the authorities say. Well, he's not a whistleblower. He's a traitor. He leaked national security. See, this is what look, Julian Assange is a journalist. What they're getting him for, the New York Times and the Guardian also published the same things because he leaked it to them. They published them. But they're both after him. The Guardian gets Assange. New York Times get Assange. Well, they did the same thing he did. He practiced journalism. It's just what Ellsberg did when he released the Pentagon Papers to the New York Times back in the 70s. That's all Assange has done. But they say, no, he's a Russian agent. He's working with the Russians to undermine American national security.
Well, our Secretary of State has also been up after Assange's blood as well.
Yeah. It's revenge. They're embarrassed. They're embarrassed by the leaks. So they claim that he hacked them or the Russians hacked him and gave them to him. And they try to make him look like he's some kind of a Russian connection agent, like they did with Trump. This is how they can say, well, he's not a journalist. And they can say a whistleblower. He's not a whistleblower. He's a traitor. Because they're embarrassed by the information.
These are Trump's people saying that that Assange did this for the Russians, though. I mean,
they're not Trump's people. They are the security bureaucracy who are also after Trump.
No, but he's replaced an awful lot of them, and he now has them people who are loyal to him there.
No, I don't think he has anybody loyal to him.
Nobody?
I don't think anybody, no.
Well, I mean, let's face it. Trump throws everybody under the bus eventually, no matter how loyal they are. So how loyal could anybody who has two brain cells to rub together be to a guy who has zero loyalty to anybody else?
Well, look, I'm not defending Trump, but there's a different way to look at this. And that is, he's an outsider. He's not one of the Republicans. He's not one of the Democrats. He's an outsider. He's a threat to the system. He's going to drain the swamp. They don't want the swamp drained. The swamp's profitable. The reason people go to Washington is to get rich. That's the reason they go there. I mean, you and I, being older, we can remember when they told us in civic courses that people went there to serve the people. They don't.
There's no civics courses anymore, period.
Yeah, they're not anymore courses, yeah. But that's, we were brought up with this idea, but that's not what happens. They go there to get rich. They go there because they're bullies and they want power and all the kinds of reasons they go there. And that's why nothing works, because they don't go there for reasons that would make it work. And so this is why, we see increasingly scholars do studies and they find out that people have no input whatsoever into policy.
And when you talk about this, it makes me think of these centrists in the Democratic Party who are running, who want to keep the same thing going, whether it's Biden or Buttigieg or Harris. I mean, these are centrists who are basically defending a really rotten system that we need to get rid of. And I think that, deep down inside, the DNC is dying to have one of them become the winning candidate. And I think that that's a surefire way to lose again.
Maybe. But if they win, we lose as well.
Well, I don't want them at all. My candidate has been Bernie Sanders. I think that he is a guy who can stand up and maybe try, like Trump, to stand up to the system, because Trump has failed to do it, and he had his chance and he tried, but he's failed. Let's face it. And now he's got this Ukraine situation where it was basically extortion that he was operating with.
No.
All right, let's have this conversation.
Yeah, there's no evidence of that. The extortion, we have clear evidence of Biden's extortion. It's in his speech before the Council on Foreign Relations. The video of the speech is online. I've posted links to it.
I'm not going to defend Biden at all.
The
idea that his son was making $50,000 a month for nothing is obscene and ridiculous, and Biden is accountable for that. And he should have told his son, you can't do that. It makes me look like, well, if he had known, he could have said it would make me look like Trump. But
it was actually a lot more than 50,000. It was like 160,000.
Really? A month?
In fact, we have the figures that Biden himself got $1 million. And his son got 750,000. So
if Biden gets thrown out of the race and then this comes out, I'm fine with that. I really don't like Biden, but if you really don't think that Trump made a threat and demanded that in order for the president of Ukraine to meet with him, he had to make a statement in order to get the meeting and in order to get the money?
No, there's no evidence of that. We have the transcript of the call, and we have the statements of the president of Ukraine.
Wait a
minute, just a minute.
All right.
Just a minute. No, there's no evidence. But let me deal with it this way. Let's suppose Trump did all these things. There's nothing illegal about them.
I would disagree. I would say that is extortion, and that using the power of the presidency to get an opponent opposition information.
No. Biden's was not his opponent. Hillary was.
No, when this was this summer. Biden was his opponent this summer when Trump asked for this.
No, everybody knew Hillary would have the nomination. Hillary and Trump, everybody knew this.
But Trump didn't ask when Hillary was running. He asked this summer. This happened over the course of the summer when he knew about Biden running. He was looking for opposition information on his opponent, his number one opponent, who was ruling the polls and still is.
I doubt it. Not Biden, surely.
Well, he's coming down. He's gradually dropping, but Biden was running, and he knew it when he asked.
Look. What Trump was asking for was investigation of corruption in a firm, and we know the firm was corrupt because the Ukrainians themselves were investigating the firm before any American president got involved. The Ukrainians were investigating this firm, and where Biden came into it was he went over there and told the previous president, not Zelensky, but the one we stuck in there, Poroshenko, or whatever his name was. They told him, I'm leaving in 6 hours. You got 6 hours to fire the prosecutor investigating this firm, or I don't give you this $1 billion.
You're talking about Biden.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was Biden that stopped the independent Ukrainian investigation of the firm. So the Ukrainians already regarded the firm as corrupt, and they were investigating it. The firm put Biden's son on the board in order to gather protection against the investigation. And sure enough, the dad came over and ordered the president of Ukraine to fire the prosecutor to stop the investigation. So we know the firm was corrupt. We already know that because the Ukrainians...
But, I'm not challenging that part.
Well, let me just finish.
Okay.
So all Trump did was to say, well, can we get on with this investigation? Because we now have a different administration in Ukraine. There's a different administration here. So why don't you reopen this investigation and let's get to the bottom of this? Now, it's the right of any American president or attorney general or anybody in that line of activity to say, hey, look, we want to see what this corruption is, what this investigation is going to find. Does it affect us, our people? And the notion that American presidents don't do this, they do it all the time. We even have assistant secretaries of state giving orders to the presidents and foreign ministers of countries. Do as you're told, we'll bomb you into the Stone Age. That's what happens. But they told the Prime Minister of Pakistan. They do it all the time. There's nothing unusual.
When they do it for the United States and in the interest of the United States, it's fine. I mean, I don't particularly like the idea of threatening to bomb countries because I like to try to find peaceful solutions. But it's fine to do something for the interest of the United States. But it sure is looking more and more from all the testimony that's coming out, all the new transcripts that are coming out. And we'll see in the next week, because next Wednesday they're going to start the public testimony, whether there was actually an attempt by Trump to extort, to get a quid pro quo.
No, it's not. And he didn't say, I want you to investigate this for me.
He said, do me a favor.
Well, that's just a way of talking.
It's
just a way of talking.
It's euphemism. And asking the president of a tiny little country that's depending on the U.S. for massive amount of aids to give an answer that would exonerate the president is not really realistic.
Look, I would caution you against wanting to get Trump so bad that you fall into this type of a situation. If what Trump did is bad, then we know for sure what Biden did was bad, and there's no investigation of him. He's a politician running for president. You said he's been leading in the polls. So what's the difference between him and Trump? The only difference is that we have clear evidence of Biden himself telling him, you got 6 hours to fire the prosecutor or I'm holding this $1 billion. Well, what's the difference between Trump and Biden? And Biden's not being investigated.
Well, I would be happy to see him investigated. And I wouldn't be surprised if Bill Barr started doing that. And maybe he already has that investigation underway.
I would bet you nothing comes out of Bill Barr.
But making an equivalency between Biden and Trump, that's fine with me because
look, I'm not saying whether it's fine with you or me. I'm saying, don't you notice there's a disconnect here? Somehow the entire establishment is after Trump for doing something they say he did, which we have no clear evidence, but we have total proof that Biden did it and nobody's after him. So this tells you that they're not after Trump for this reason. They're after Trump because he doesn't fit in.
Well,
they got to get rid of him. And Biden fits in perfectly, so they don't care what he does.
No, he doesn't. No, he
yes,
does. Well,
does.
He does for some people. Yeah.
I'm not talking about you and me.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm talking about for Washington, he fits in.
So, you wrote an article about me recently.
Huh?
You wrote an article about me recently.
Did I?
Yeah, you did, referring to an article that I wrote where I basically said that the purpose of impeachment was to keep Trump dangling and skewered. And I said that it's a political thing, and impeachment is political. I mean, don't you?
Well, I agree with that. I guess that's why I wrote about it. It is. It's to shut him up. It's to stop him from normalizing relations with Russia and bringing the jobs home. It's to stop him. It's to get him out of the way of the global corporations and to get him out of the way of the military security complex. So that's what it's all about. And you get confused because you don't like him because he doesn't have the right idealistic approach.
Yeah, because he's a chronic liar. He's a narcissist. He's a psychopath.
Right.
What he's done to immigrant children, what he's doing to the environment. I got a long list of things I don't like him.
I'm not disputing any of this.
You agree with me on some of them.
I'm just saying that's not why they're after him. They're not after him for your reasons. They're after him because he's in their way. They don't care about what you're talking about. They're just saying too. They're narcissistic and crooked and everything. We know that. You get confused between why you want him and you think that that's why they want him. They could care less.
When he was originally elected, I had some hope.
I had some hope in the sense that I thought he had the balls to take these on, but I said he's not going to get anywhere because he doesn't know Washington. He doesn't know who to appoint, and he's going to get staffed up with people who are going to work against him.
So do you still believe that he should have a second term?
I think at this point, when we have witnessed essentially a coup by the military security complex against the President of the United States, that he better have a second term or they will have taken over. What you're witnessing is not self-righteous, outraged, moral people wanting Trump out because he's narcissistic and all the reasons you gave. That's not what we're witnessing. We're witnessing a coup by self-interested parties who feel that Trump is a threat to their power and profit. And if the president is removed for these reasons, it's a political assassination instead of the way they got rid of John F. Kennedy.
What if in the next 2 weeks we see through the testimony that he really did do extortion? He really did do a quid pro quo?
It wouldn't matter. It's not illegal. It's not illegal. You see, you've already you've let them define the issue for you. I've already told you, presidents have done this always have done this. None of them have. It's not
for their personal interest.
It's not the reason they're after him. It's a current excuse. It's no more valid than the Russia getting
quid pro quo for his campaign. That is something that no president has ever done before.
Wait, you're totally wrong. They do it every time they accept a campaign contribution from big oil, from timber, from mining, from the military security complex, from the Israel lobby, from the pharmaceutical companies. Every time they accept that, it's a quid pro quo. Every time.
The difference is they're not as dumb as Trump, so they don't do it so they get busted
right.
doing it.
It doesn't matter how dumb or smart they are. It happens. It's the nature of the political system. You see, I agree with you on all of Trump's demerits and lack of merit. But it's not why they're after him. They're after him because he's a threat to the swamp.
I think they're going to win.
I wouldn't be surprised.
I think that the Republicans are going to remove him from the White House by the end of the year. And I think that yesterday increased the likelihood of that. The big news was that Virginia was taken over by the Democrats, their House and Senate, and that that the guy that Trump supported in Kentucky lost. But where I live in Bucks County, Pennsylvania. It's considered one of the most significant bellwether counties in America. For the first time in over 30 years, the county commissioners are going to be Democrats, 2 out of 3. It's been 2 Republicans and 1 Democrat for 30 years. For the first time in 30 years, that happened not only in Bucks County, but also in the adjacent county of Delaware Valley and also Lehigh Valley. This is huge, and I really believe that what's going to happen is the Republicans are going to do their internal polling, and they're going to see that not only are they going to lose the White House and the House, but the Senate, and also down ticket in the states, they're going to see losses of state houses. They're going to lose governorships. They're going to lose school board members. They're going to have such a trickle-down effect on Trump being on the ballot that they're going to basically go to him and say, whatever, you got to go, because if you don't, it's going to be a Republican apocalypse. That's a word that I predict is going to start coming out, Republican apocalypse.
Well, I don't know why you think it'll make any difference who's in there. It won't make any difference because the same private interest groups will continue to pull the strings and run the show.
I think that I think I like Tulsi Gabbard and I like Bernie Sanders.
Well, there's no chance of Tulsi Gabbard getting in there. They already saying she's a Russian agent. So,
yeah, and I wanted to ask you about her, but I think Bernie Sanders may have a chance, and people like you might be able to help him.
You know, Hillary stole it from him last time, and he let them. He could have fought, but he didn't. So he hasn't got what it takes. He's not a tough guy like Trump. If Trump can't stand up to him, Bernie Sanders can't. You don't understand. This is a coup. And the reason the Republicans, if they go against it, the reason is not the reasons you gave. The reasons are they don't want the swamp drained either. They're getting the same money from the same people.
They're all fighting for their deck chairs on the Titanic.
It won't be their Titanic. It'll be ours.
It is already.
It's not that, you keep letting your view of the situation blind you to that's not why they want him out. They want him out because he's a threat to the system. You don't like the system. You got your book, The Bottom-Up Revolution. You want the system overthrown and changed.
Yes.
Well, if they're not going to let anybody do that. And you can see they're not going to let Trump even do 2 things. He can't get rid of the trade agreements, and he can't normalize relations with Russia. And that's why he was elected.
So what would he do if he had another 4 years?
It doesn't matter. What I'm telling you is, if the coup succeeds, then the people have lost all control over the government, and every future president will know, they will have learned, we only serve the ruling oligarchs.
And you recently wrote...
He'll do to us what they did to Trump.
You recently wrote about Kennedy, too.
They killed Kennedy because they thought he was soft on communism and would get rid of the Cold War by making all these deals with Khrushchev. And the Soviet hardliners had the same view of Khrushchev. They said, he's being taken in by the Americans. He'll sell out communism. He doesn't understand the capitalists are our enemy, and they overthrew him. So both of them got overthrown. The hardliners in the Soviet Union overthrew Khrushchev. They removed him. And here the CIA and the military and the Joint Chiefs killed Kennedy. So you see, and Nixon, I'm sure you believe Watergate and all that. No, Watergate was a CIA orchestration. They couldn't assassinate Nixon because they had just assassinated Kennedy, and that story was falling apart. There were all kinds of suspicions and books. And so they got rid of Nixon. Why did they want to get rid of him? Oh, he opened to China. He had arms control agreements with Russia. Oh, he's a threat to the Cold War. We got to get rid of him. Our budget's gone, our power. So they assassinated him with Watergate.
And so you write, one of your most recent articles is an obituary of the Western world.
Yeah. Yeah, it's gone. It's gone. Everything about it is gone.
So is there no hope? Are there no ways to change things?
You know, what you see happening in some places, like Haiti, Venezuela, Bolivia, Ecuador, you're seeing the bottom-up revolution. The people have had so much pain and austerity and suffering that they're in the streets and they're starting to use violence. You know, in Europe, they're too cowed. I thought that what they did to Greece would produce a bottom-up revolution, but it didn't. They gave up and they left the country. All the young people just left Greece. Here, well, everybody's drowning in debt, and the monetary policy of the country is only for a handful of big New York banks. And we have an income distribution that's worse than a gangster state. You realize the income distribution in the United States is one of the worst in the world, that there are gangster states that have a more equal income distribution than the United States, income and wealth distribution. Yeah, you could maybe. We got all this homelessness. You know, we got a lot of the homeless people have jobs. Did you know that? They just don't make enough to pay rent.
Yes.
Yeah, you could push people so far that it would just explode, and possibly the authorities would lose control. I don't know, but I think they're fearful of that. I think that's why all the police forces are militarized. They're like SWAT. They're like special forces teams, really. If you look at police departments.
You know, it's interesting because I in my book Bottom Up Revolution, which people can find out about at robcall.com. I believe there's some hope, because I think that before there was civilization, people took care of each other, and people evolved literally over a couple million years to have hundreds of genes that are bottom-up genes that care about each other and that take care of each other. And that is returning because of smartphones and the internet and video games, and it's kind of catalyzing young people. I don't think that we over 40 can do it. I think that it's going to be the young people. It's kind of like the Bible. You know, Moses took the slaves out of Egypt, but they had to wait a couple generations for them to become different people to be ready to go to the promised land. And I think that if we're going to see any hope, it's going to be from young people. It's so frustrating to look at boomers and see how sad they are in terms of their attitudes. They've given up. They've basically said, yes, sir, yes, ma'am, we're going to do whatever you say and stick it to us.
Well, I hope you're right. I'm not going to say anything except that I think your hope might be frustrated by identity politics, because identity politics breaks people up and turns them against one another. Blacks against whites, men and women against each other, transgendered, homosexuals against straights. You look at the way they have they have busted up the unity of the people. That's what identity politics does. It destroys the unity of the population, so the population cannot unite against the rulers. And they've used it very cleverly, and it's now used to demonize white people. And so where is the unity? How do you get this unity? When you have identity politics played to the hilt, creating hatred. I mean, they're teaching blacks to hate white people. They teach Latinos to hate white people. Blacks and Jews hate each other. They teach it. They teach it. It's everywhere. A lot of police chiefs have said, God, no wonder we have all this trouble. They teach the blacks in the schools to hate white people. With this type of disunity, that makes it very difficult. It's another trick the establishment has to keep everybody disunited who's going to coalesce against them. I mean, I hope it happens.
I think that the hope is going to be with people who were born after 1980. You know, and for my book, I interviewed a lot of neuroscientists, and every one of them agreed that people born after 1980 have different brains. Their brains literally work differently. They see the world differently. And I would agree with you, for people who were born before 1980, people over 40, they are the ones that are the most amenable, most willing to embrace identity politics. Not just them, but I think they're the worst ones. And I think that we have, I had a long conversation with Chris Hedges, who's another very cynical person who believes we're near the end times. But I believe that we do have hope. And what I've tried to do in my book is to describe countless ways where people are working together, where new kinds of power are changing. I mean, in today, look, 40 years ago, a kid did not have an opportunity to have power. Now a 13-year-old can have a YouTube channel and influence millions of people. It's amazing how things have changed. And we're in the middle of that. I really believe that there can be hope. Don't you agree that the structure of power and access to it has changed massively?
No, I don't agree. I think, yeah, it has. It's gone more concentrated. Now, I'm all for hope, and so it suits me fine for there to be hope. If there wasn't some hope, I wouldn't bother to write. What's the point of explaining what's going on to people if there's no hope? I'm not sure about, you know more about this than I do, about where the hope, what age group the hope's in. Actually, I see it in people like you and me, the fact that we are trying to do something about it. But I think, no, I think the power is more concentrated. It's more in the top. And I think that to come back to my point, and I think what you're missing, and I think what all the progressive and anti-Trumpers are missing, is that what we are witnessing right now is a coup by the ruling oligarchs to get rid of a president of which they did not choose. And if this coup succeeds, then there's very little hope, because every succeeding president will know, look what they did to Trump, I'm going to do whatever they want.
And I really believe that Bernie Sanders could be somebody who does stand up. He has a history of standing up to power. And yeah, he made a promise that he would follow the rules with the DNC. And a lot of people hate that. And you've said that it shows that it's weakness. But I really believe that he has the integrity, which is such an important part. And he has the determination and the history to do it. So I think there's a huge difference between him and Elizabeth Warren. I don't think she could do it. I think she's not nearly the same as people think she is.
She started out, I remember some years ago, I was really impressed with her. She was against the banks, and she was going to roll back Glass-Steagall, going to hold the banks accountable. All that needed to be done. But they went and said, darling, do you want any more campaign contributions? You better shut up or you're out of here. And she shut up. So, and you see this anytime they get in the way of the powerful, organized private interests, they give up. Years ago, let me tell you this, years ago, Senator Schumer, the Democrat from New York, approached me, the Republican assistant secretary for Reagan. I was no longer in office. He was senator. He said, look, I'm really concerned about the offshoring. It's costing New York jobs. It's costing the country jobs. Will you join with me in writing an op-ed for the New York Times explaining this problem. He said, we'll have it in the first day after the New Year. So I said, of course, Senator. And so his administrative assistant and I put the article together, ran it by him. He did whatever he had to do to be sure, and it was published in the New York Times. It was a sensation. The Brookings Institution in Washington, which at the time was a liberal instead of a neoconservative think tank, it was a liberal think tank. They called a big conference and got all their, and Schumer and I were there to present. And they had all the economists and policy in Washington there. They had C-SPAN. It was broadcast live. It was broadcast another 10 or 20 times, rebroadcast. It was everywhere. We dominated the meeting. We made a big impact. We had World Bank economists saying they're right, all this thing. And then his A came to me and said he wants to do another article to follow up. Will you? I said, of course. This is very important because this was just the beginning. If we could have stopped the offshoring then, this was like 20 years ago. This was, I think, 2000 or something like that. I could find the thing and send it to you. And I said, sure. We started on it and went cold.
When you say offshoring, you mean companies leaving the United States to go overseas?
To produce there for the market here.
Okay, yeah, because there's another kind of offshoring which is done digitally, but that back 20 years ago, that was not that common.
Yeah, no, this was the close down of the manufacturing sector of the American economy, moving it to China.
This was the result of these trade deals.
Partially, yeah, but there was more involved in that.
Okay.
And so but all of a sudden, the second thing, it went cold, stopped. And I couldn't figure out why, what. And I later learned Wall Street went to Schumer. He said, you got to stop this. You won't be our person in the Senate. They stopped him. Why? Because Wall Street was making a lot of money. In fact, what was really forcing the firms off was Wall Street would go and tell, I was actually on a board that had this experience. They go and say, you make a lot more money if you were producing in China because the labor cost differential is huge and all those profits would really be good and your stock price would go up. And why don't you think about it? And if you didn't decide to do it, they would come back and say, well, you know what? You'd better do this or we're going to finance a takeover of your company. And then the jobs will be moved offshore. So if you want to stay in control, you move them now, or we're going to finance a takeover. We'll take the company over and move them off. And I experienced that. As a board member, I experienced that.
You're talking about the deep state. You've written about the deep state recently.
I'm talking about Wall Street. I'm talking about Goldman Sachs, Citibank, Chase Manhattan, whatever it is. It used to be Chase Manhattan. JP Morgan Chase, I think it is now. Morgan Chase. These big banks, that's what it is.
What about the deep state, though? Where's that fit into this?
The deep state, I think, are the security agencies. I was once in the congressional staff. I was a staff associate, House Defense Appropriations Subcommittee. So I had all the security clearances because I had to advise the members on the weapon systems. And then I was chief economist, House Budget Committee. And so I had to have all the information on the budget, CIA's budget, weapons, defense, all that. I had all these clearances, and you couldn't find out anything about the CIA's budget. Nobody, the members couldn't find out anything.
Yeah.
Nobody.
They're about on account. We need to have a list of different parts of the government that are unaccountable, and we need to break them down.
Well, I'm going to tell you something right now because we're out of time probably. One thing I'm almost certain of is that Barr and the Justice Department are not going to come up with any indictments of any of the people who orchestrated Russiagate, because they already know that the security complex is far more powerful than the Attorney General. They already know that part of the security complex is in the Justice Department. The FBI is a Justice Department agency. And they're not going to go after their own people. And so they're going to leave Trump hanging.
How do we do something about this security complex?
You can't. I don't think you can. You can't. They can do whatever they want. And look, we know John Brennan started Russiagate. We know Comey committed felonies when he went to the FISA court with the Steele dossier, not telling them it was a product of Hillary Clinton and the Democratic National Committee, to get a warrant to spy on Trump. This is a felony. Everyone knows this. There's no doubt about it. All kinds of former U.S. attorneys have said that Comey's going to prison. Well, nothing is going to happen. They're not going to bring this forward. It's not going to happen. Nothing's going to happen to McCabe or to that black woman who was the Associate Attorney General. Nothing's going to happen to Peter Stoltz and his girlfriend. Nothing's going to happen to any of them. Nothing's going to happen to Rod Rosenstein. Nothing's going to happen. We already know what they did. We already know what the felonies are. And there's no indictment. There's nothing.
We need to have a conversation. I just refuse. You know, I do not do well when people say you can't do something. I just hate to. I refuse to be.
Well, I'll tell you what. You tell me what can do. I mean, you're asking my opinion. If you know what to do, that's fine with me. I'll help you.
I think the first step is we've got to start. You've started this conversation. The national security state is out of control. It's criminal. It's lawless. It's unaccountable. That's the opening sentence. Yeah, and then we've got to go from there and start saying, where are the cracks? Where does the light get in? Where do we get whistleblowers who we can protect? How do we do anything we can? But if you just shake your head and say, no, there's nothing that can be done, then nothing will be done. We have to try.
Well, look, you know, I write about it all I can, pointing it out. And you know what the response you get is, a lot of people are just patriotic and they think you're anti-American. Oh, our government wouldn't do that. Our government wouldn't do that. Oh, we have the Russian threat. You know, the Russian threat makes them support the security agencies.
Yeah, I've never
seen all of you progressives.
CIA.
All of you progressives.
No.
About the Russia. All the
not all. No way.
That's made the CIA untouchable.
No,
we got to save us from the Russians.
Wait a second, Paul. All the progressives I know are disgusted by Rachel Maddow and her obsession with Russia and MSNBC altogether. I mean,
good.
It's don't blame the progressives for that. It's the liberals. It's the people who love Klobuchar and that crew.
Tell me what the difference is, so I can be up to date.
The difference is that you know people listen to you. People listen to what you say. I mean, in the readers of op-ed news, you know, I think where there's some disagreement is what you say about women's rights, but I think almost all the stuff you say I agree with. I mean, I have some issues with what you say about women. I have a problem there. I mean, and we haven't gotten into it and we don't have time. But I think most of the stuff that you say, the progressives I know agree with what you have to say. There is a problem with the system. There is a problem with the security state. There is a problem. But the other side, I don't like Trump. And you agreed with me with all the reasons I don't like him. And I think that's enough reason to give it to somebody else who is an anti-establishment person.
Yeah, okay, fine. That's fine with me, except I want to come back to the point that you don't seem to get is what they're getting rid of Trump, not for any of the reasons you and I want him rid of. They're getting rid of him because he's in their way. And this is a coup. And once you have a coup against a president like this, that's the end. You don't get another president that can do anything. And furthermore, it tells people it doesn't matter who you elect, because if we don't like him,
I disagree. I think that revolutions don't happen the first time that people speak out. Revolutions often have to throw a lot of crap against the wall before they actually stick. That's the history of revolutions. And Trump was a guy that the people voted for, hoping to fight against the system, but he was too flawed of a guy. And I think it still can be done by finding somebody who has more integrity, who isn't so self-centered and narcissistic, who can actually fight for the people instead of for himself. And I think that it is possible, and I don't think that it's the end just if Trump is removed.
Well, why is the next president going to have more protection against these forces than Trump has?
Because Trump has made himself so vulnerable by his narcissism.
I don't
I got you thinking, Paul. Hey.
I don't really know that his support is any less than it was.
I think it has dropped. His support has dropped maybe 20% in the last month. And the amount of people who think he should be impeached has gone up. And, you know, I hear you, what you're saying, that the reason that they're doing this is to protect the power system that exists. I hear you about that. But I also think that he failed. He hasn't been able to do it. There's no reason to think that if he got another 4 years, he would. And I think that I really believe, the last person I want in is Biden. And I think that him and Buttigieg, who's the other centrist in the picture, they would be awful, and they would just enable the maintenance of the system. But I really think that Bernie Sanders could do it. And I think that, you know, what I've been saying is I think that the Republicans are going to remove Trump by the end of the year because they have to, because then they're going to have to put up candidates.
No, well, that's not why they're removing. They're removing because he's not part of the system.
Well, okay.
But let me point out something to you. If he did get reelected, that would stop the establishment's move against him, because it would be the people saying, screw you, you tried, we don't believe you, we believe Trump, we reelected him. That would stop the system going after him, and he would be able to do something.
He would be unleashed, that's for sure. It's scary.
He would.
Wouldn't that scare you?
No, because he would clean up the military security complex. He would do what Kennedy said he was going to do. Remember what got Kennedy killed is when he told Bobby, as soon as I'm reelected, I'm busting the CIA into 1,000 pieces. And if Trump gets reelected, that's exactly what he would do, because all of a sudden, the CNN, all these people that are going on about him 24/7, all of them discredited. People don't listen to them anymore. The military security complex spent 4 years trying to pull off a coup under every kinds of pretext. It failed. Then you would get your change. That's far more likely to happen than an old man like Bernie Sanders with a social conscience getting up there. The system will tear him to pieces. They will tear him to pieces.
You know, I think that he needs to be challenged about that. I don't know that that's the case. It hasn't done that to him over the years.
I don't want it to happen to him, but that's what I think would happen.
You know, let's put it this way. If Trump was off the table, which I think could happen, and you had people like Marco Rubio and Ted Cruz and what have you running, who would you want to see as the Democrat running?
Tulsi or Bernie.
Why?
Because I think they do have a bit of integrity.
What do you think's going on with Tulsi? Why is she being attacked so much? You wrote about that.
She's an outsider. She doesn't fit in like Trump. She tells the truth. You know, she doesn't support the wars in the Middle East. She doesn't support the conflict that's been orchestrated with Russia. This is very dangerous. You know, Stephen Coyne and I, we lived through the Cold War. We both say we've never seen this level of tension, and particularly when neither side trusts the other. And we both emphasize that these early warnings, these warning systems have endless false alarms. There were hundreds of them during the Cold War, and neither side ever believed it because they were working together to reduce tensions. Well, now we've had, since Clinton, elevating the tensions. Nobody trusts the other side. All the arms control agreements have been destroyed. If you get a false warning now, they're going to believe it.
Yeah.
Somebody's going to push the button.
You know, I just had on as a guest Ward Wilson, who has written some really brilliant work about how nuclear weapons don't work, how they didn't win World War II. It was the carpet bombing of 40 cities that did it. And, you know, he says that deterrence doesn't work either, that it's too human. It depends on human subjectivity too much.
Well, the weapons work in the sense that now they're hundreds of times more powerful than the atomic bombs that we dropped on Japan. And if these things go off, there ain't going to be much life left on Earth.
What fascinated me was what he said is, if we have a nuclear Armageddon and anybody survives, it won't be white people. He didn't put it that way, but what he said was that most of the nuclear plants, most of the nuclear silos, almost all of them are in the northern hemisphere.
They're in white countries.
It would leave as survivors the southern hemisphere.
Yeah, he's right. If they're survivors. Yeah. I mean, they might be. You know, they talk about nuclear winter. They talk about all kinds of, and there's no way of knowing. And so the risk is just horrific. You know, my view of nuclear weapons is it should all be dismantled. It should be completely against any law to make one. And I believe the same thing about the bacterial weapons, you know, and the chemical weapons, but particularly the bacterial weapons, because some of that stuff gets loose. You don't know what can happen.
Yeah, scary.
So you shouldn't make weapons that nobody can win by using. You know what I mean?
Good rule. Good rule.
It's suicide. It's suicide of the human race. Those kinds of weapons are not sensible. So it should, you know, these things shouldn't exist.
That's
and but they do. And so when you talk to the other power and you're demonizing them and you're calling the president the new Hitler and you're putting missile bases on their border and you're constantly antagonizing and provoking them, you're asking for the death of the planet.
Yeah.
And this is the reason that, you know, I think it's a sin that Trump was stopped from normalizing relations with Russia. There was nothing more important to be done.
But instead, he canceled the treaty with Russia, the nuclear treaty.
This is after they've stopped him. I mean, he can't even speak to them. It proves he's a Russian agent. Mm. So if you can't even deal with them, how are you going to normalize relations? And so what he has to do now is appease the military security complex. No. He appeases them to try to get them off his back.
I guess it's time for us to wrap. We could go on about this.
Yeah, well, it's a good conversation, Rob. You're a good conversation. I look forward to the next one.
Okay.